255 BC. Hundreds of ships moved steadily across an endless sea. Thousands of soldiers, sailors, rowers, commanders. The fleet stretched far beyond the horizon. Wood creaked beneath every wave. Oars struck the water in perfect rhythm. The sails caught a steady wind. The sea looked calm. The sky revealed no warning. Every man believed the hardest part of the campaign was already behind them. They had survived months of war, battles, long marches, foreign shores. Now, they were finally heading home. No enemy fleet appeared on the horizon. No arrows filled the sky. No army waited to stop them. Only open water, as far as the eye could see. But far beyond the fleet, something had already begun to move. It carried no banners. It commanded no soldiers. It answered to no king. Hour by hour, the wind grew stronger. The waves rose higher. The horizon slowly disappeared beneath darkening clouds. The sea that had carried them for days began to change. Within hours, one of the greatest military disasters of the ancient world would begin. For centuries, history remembered the wars, the generals, the victories, but the sea remembers something else. This is the story of how nature became the first battlefield. The disaster did not begin with a storm. It began with an ambition. By the middle of the 3rd century BC, Rome had become the dominant power on the Italian peninsula. Its armies had defeated rival kingdoms on land. Its soldiers were disciplined. Its commanders were experienced. But one obstacle remained. Across the Mediterranean stood Carthage, a wealthy maritime empire whose strength rested upon trade, powerful fleets, and control of the sea. The two powers could not expand forever without colliding. In 264 BC, that collision became the First Punic War. For Rome, the conflict presented an unfamiliar challenge. Its legions were unmatched on land, but Rome possessed almost no naval tradition. Carthage had spent generations mastering the sea. Its sailors understood the winds. Its captains knew the currents. Its warships dominated the western Mediterranean. If Rome hoped to defeat such an enemy, it would first have to master a battlefield it barely understood. So the Republic began one of the most ambitious military projects in its history. Shipyards worked without pause. Forests supplied thousands of trees. Carpenters shaped enormous timbers into warships. Experienced sailors were scarce, so ordinary citizens learned to row, navigate, and fight aboard vessels they had never imagined commanding. Within only a few years, Rome had built a fleet large enough to challenge the greatest naval power of its age. Against all expectations, the gamble succeeded. Roman fleets won important victories. The war gradually shifted in Rome's favor. Confident after a series of successes, Roman leaders approved an even bolder objective: carry the war across the sea, strike directly at Carthaginian territory, force the enemy to defend its own homeland. It was an extraordinary plan. Thousands of soldiers boarded hundreds of ships. Supplies filled every available space below deck. The fleet sailed south toward Africa. For Rome, it marked more than another campaign. It was proof that a republic born on land believed it had finally learned to command the sea. Soon, that belief would face its greatest test, not against Carthage, but against the Mediterranean itself. The Roman campaign in Africa did not unfold as planned. Early victories gave way to costly defeats. After months of fighting, Rome ordered the surviving army to return home. A rescue fleet crossed the Mediterranean to recover the exhausted soldiers. The evacuation succeeded. Thousands of men boarded the waiting ships. The fleet turned north towards Sicily. For the soldiers, the worst seemed over. They had survived the campaign. They believed they had escaped the dangers of war. Ahead lay home, families, safety. The fleet itself was enormous. Ancient historians describe hundreds of warships accompanied by transport vessels carrying soldiers, horses, and supplies. Together, they formed one of the largest naval convoys of the ancient world. Keeping such a force together demanded constant discipline. Captains relied on flags, horns, and shouted commands. Each ship had to maintain its position while avoiding collisions with the vessels around it. Everything depended upon favorable weather. For several days, the sea remained calm. The coastline passed slowly beside the fleet. The wind filled the sails. Rowers settled into a steady rhythm. Nothing suggested disaster, yet experienced sailors began noticing subtle changes. The wind no longer blew with the same consistency. The air became heavier. Clouds slowly gathered above the horizon. The surface of the sea grew increasingly restless. Roman commanders remained focused on reaching Sicily as quickly as possible. Delaying the voyage meant risking supply shortages and exposing thousands of exhausted soldiers to further hardship. Still, the fleet pressed on. Hour after hour, the Mediterranean revealed a different face. The waves became larger. Ships began rising and falling with increasing violence. Maintaining formation became more difficult. Orders that had once passed easily from one vessel to another were now swallowed by wind and distance. The Mediterranean was no longer carrying the fleet. It was beginning to control it. The enemy was nowhere in sight. No Carthaginian fleet appeared. No battle lines formed. Yet with every passing mile, the danger grew greater. The Roman fleet had entered a battle no commander could direct, and no army could win. The storm arrived with astonishing speed. The steady wind became a violent gale. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Rain lashed the decks. Within moments, visibility began to disappear. The fleet struggled to remain together. Captains shouted orders that vanished beneath the roar of the wind. Signal flags became impossible to see. Horn calls faded into the crashing waves. One by one, ships disappeared into the storm, isolated from the fleet around them. The sea rose into towering walls of water. Warships climbed steep waves, only to plunge violently into the valleys below. Every impact strained the wooden hulls. Masts bent under the force of the wind. Rigging snapped. Sails tore apart. Rowers fought desperately to keep their ships pointed into the waves. Many could no longer control them. The storm decided their course. As panic spread, formation collapsed completely. Ships drifted into one another. Oars shattered on impact. Some vessels lost their rudders. Others began taking on water faster than their crews could remove it. The Roman fleet had survived battles against experienced enemies, but nothing had prepared it for this. Ancient warships were built to fight, not to withstand the full violence of an open Mediterranean storm. The coastline, once a guide toward safety, became another deadly threat. Powerful waves drove helpless ships toward hidden rocks and steep cliffs. Wood splintered against stone. Entire hulls broke apart within seconds. Thousands of soldiers who had survived months of war suddenly found themselves fighting for a different kind of survival. Heavy armor dragged many beneath the surface. Others clung desperately to broken timbers as enormous waves swept them away. There was no battle line, no opposing commander, no victory to win, only wind, water, and a sea that no longer showed mercy. Before the storm finally passed, one of the greatest fleets Rome had ever assembled had already ceased to exist. When the storm finally passed, the silence revealed the true scale of the disaster. Where hundreds of ships had once filled the sea, only scattered survivors remained. Broken masts floated across the water. Fragments of shattered hulls drifted with the current. Shields, weapons, cargo. Ancient historians recorded an astonishing loss. Around 384 Roman ships were destroyed. Only a small fraction survived the catastrophe. Modern historians debate the exact figures, but they agree on one point. Few naval disasters in ancient history matched its scale. The human cost was even greater. Tens of thousands of soldiers, sailors, and rowers disappeared beneath the Mediterranean. Many had survived months of campaigning in Africa, only to lose their lives within sight of the journey home. Some ships never sank in deep water. Driven onto rocky coastlines, they broke apart as relentless waves smashed them against the cliffs. Those who reached the shore often found themselves stranded without food, fresh water, or any organized rescue. For Rome, the disaster was almost unimaginable. An enormous fleet, built through years of labor, timber, and wealth, had vanished in a single storm. No enemy commander could claim the victory. No fleet had intercepted them. No naval battle had been fought. The Mediterranean alone had shattered one of the greatest military expeditions of its age. The Republic had suffered one of the worst naval catastrophes in its history. Yet the greatest challenge still remained. How could Rome continue a war after losing not only thousands of experienced soldiers, but also the fleet on which its strategy depended? The storm ended in a matter of hours. Its consequences lasted for years. Rome had not simply lost ships, it had lost trained sailors, experienced rowers, veteran soldiers, commanders who could not be easily replaced. The Republic faced a crisis unlike any it had experienced before. Building a fleet demanded enormous resources. Thousands of trees had to be cut. Shipyards had to be expanded. Skilled craftsmen worked for months to construct a single warship. Now, hundreds of those vessels lay scattered across the Mediterranean. The financial burden was immense. Entire communities were called upon to provide timber, labor, and money for yet another fleet. Families who had already sacrificed sons to the war now watched Rome ask for even more. Many believed the Republic could no longer continue the conflict. The sea had destroyed what Carthage had failed to defeat. Yet surrender was never seriously considered. Instead of abandoning the war, Rome chose to rebuild. Forests echoed with the sound of axes, shipyards filled with workers. Another fleet slowly began to rise from the ruins of the last. It was an extraordinary display of determination. The Republic accepted enormous losses and continued forward. Years later, that perseverance would eventually help bring victory in the First Punic War. But Rome never forgot the lesson written upon the sea. A powerful fleet could challenge an enemy. It could conquer coastlines. It could carry armies across continents. Yet none of those achievements offered protection against the forces of nature. The greatest obstacle Rome faced during that campaign had never been another navy. It had been the Mediterranean itself. History remembers the First Punic War as a struggle between two great powers: Rome, Carthage, generals, armies, fleets. But one of the war's greatest victories belonged to neither side. It belonged to the sea, the gathering wind, the towering waves, the hidden rocks, the relentless Mediterranean. None of them sailed beneath a flag. None of them answered to any commander. Yet together, they destroyed one of the largest fleets of the ancient world before an enemy could strike. The disaster changed more than a single campaign. It exposed the limits of military power. Even the greatest republic of its age could not command the weather. Its ships could master battles. Its soldiers could conquer distant shores, but neither could control the sea itself. For centuries, historians have studied Rome's strategy, its naval innovations, and its determination to rebuild after catastrophe. Those achievements deserve to be remembered, but they tell only part of the story. The Mediterranean was never simply a route between continents. It was a battlefield in its own right, one that demanded respect from every fleet that entered its waters. Kings approved the campaign. Commanders led the expedition. Thousands of soldiers believed they were sailing toward home. But in the end, the sea demanded a price no empire could refuse. Hundreds of ships disappeared beneath the waves, not because another navy proved stronger, but because nature had already claimed the final victory. The Roman fleet disaster remains one of history's clearest reminders that before an enemy can destroy an army, nature often destroys it first.